All right. Hey, good afternoon for me, and I think still good morning for you, depending where
Good
everybody
morning.
else is. Good
Good
day.
morning for me, just, but good afternoon if it's afternoon in your part of the world.
Hey, we're here to talk about some exciting news. A couple of authors joining you from I guess, what are we in the Western Hemisphere? Uh, Also, we could say North America for this international book discussion. So excited to talk a little bit more about Pathfinders. And now, Peter, we can say it's a best-selling book, right? Hit that in a couple of
Congratulations.
yeah.
Fantastic, Pete. You deserve it. Amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I still don't have my copy of Dim Sum Strategy back because I got through some of it and then shared it with some other folks. So,
That's
yeah.
what it looks like.
Hey,
Dim sum strategy, it's there. Yeah.
so what I'd like to talk about a little bit is share some of your background, right? So people can learn a little bit more. We'll talk about some of the concepts and Pathfinders, get people excited about it. I'll put a link in the chat if folks want to learn a little bit more about the book. But let's just kind of grease the skids a little bit and share a little bit more about how you've gotten to where you are. The piece of you writing a book that turned out to be really, really good. And I want to make sure that I thank Leah for bringing us together as well. It's been
Yeah.
fantastic.
No, thanks, Leo. Well, let's not forget this is really about you and your great book, which is just out now, Pathfinders. And I'm always jealous when I kind of find ideas that are so simple. You kind of think of, whoa, why didn't I think of that? But it's such a great idea, the concept of building your own personal board. And you've not only just captured it, but you've articulated it incredibly well. So, I mean, whoever's listening to this, if you haven't got it yet, go check out Pete's book and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's not forget what we're here for. My book's been around, and funnily enough, right after this, I'm just about to go into the recording studio to do the audiobook version of it
Oh,
because
wow.
I launched mine. I soft launched it just before COVID hit, and the plan was to do a mini book tour and everything else like that. And COVID struck. My wife, Regina, unfortunately, was one of the first 10 people in British Columbia to contract COVID when it was really scary. And we had this dystopian scene of kind of ambulances coming in the dark of night with hazmat suited people carrying her away. And I honestly thought, well, goodness, is this the last time we'll ever see her? And of course, well, I'm happy to say that she survived and got over that and recovered fully. So that's all nice. But it was incredibly scary at the time. And bottom line was, 3 months we were quarantined. The book launches were shelved. Everything went off. But somehow it still managed to kind of get its way through. And I got some really nice feedback about it. Um, and that book, Dim Sum Strategy, was really capturing the story of the brand company, which is what you asked me to start in on, a bit about my background. And the brand company now, with the benefit of hindsight, 20 years on, was probably one of the first pioneering specialist brand consulting companies in the world. And before that, my background was in advertising. My last corporate role was running BBDO Asia Pacific. I looked after their 14 markets. I had 11 years with Ogilvy running some offices there. And with Leo Burnett, also had 5 years running Southeast Asia for Leo Burnett. And so I had a fun run in advertising. And the beauty of the advertising world was it allowed you to experience a complete smorgasbord of different clients and cultures and wonderful brands all at once. So every day was different, and you got to experience all of these different cultures. But the frustration was you were still, in those days, kind of dismissed as just the guys that do the ads. In the very early days of advertising, your advertising agency partners were strategic consultants, and they were like business consultants. They would sit with the CEOs around the top table, and they would be your business partners, and you would look and find business solutions in creative ways. And the advertising component of it, or the communication, was almost a byproduct. You were paid a hefty commission, 15% on media as it was then, and you would justify that through the strategic insight you can provide. And you had very smart strategic planners and thinkers behind that. All of that changed as the agencies diversified and split off, and started with the media guys moving off saying, we'll do this for 5%. And then, of course, the first things to go is the quality, the strategic thinking. Clients took that in-house. The McKinseys, the Bain & Co's, the Deloittes took up the strategic consulting. So what has this got to do with the brand company? And the question, the point was, we could see, I started this with a couple of colleagues in Hong Kong, and we could see that millions and millions and millions of dollars was being spent on what we called the superficial packaging of brands. That was your logo, your visual identity, your websites, or even then your ad campaigns, but not on the substance of the experience of your product or service that really drives the perceptions. And so we said, look, if you can articulate, what it is your brand stands for in people's minds, because that's all the brand is. It's a perception. It's a territory in the mind that you own, and you do your best to try and influence that perception. If you can articulate that in a way in which you can deliver it consistently in a relevant, compelling, differentiated, and above all credible way, why wouldn't you want to make that the heart of everything your organization does and says? So instead of just driving the marketing side or the superficial packaging side, and not to do it down, design is incredibly important to get right. But instead of doing it first and saying, that's it, we've done it now, that's our brand, you need to go and impact the substance of it. So we developed the brand DNA way before Simon Sinek was talking about the why. It was, the role, the reason you exist beyond making money, to service your clients, what the key beliefs are that you hold that differentiate you from your competitors, what your overarching promise or commitment is to deliver to them, what the benefit is they get from delivering against your promise, and how you go about doing it, your culture. And altogether that kind of creates your DNA. And so we crafted that and developed this brand-centered management process that drove the principles of your brand DNA through every aspect of your organization, from corporate strategy to your people, to your structures and systems that enable or hinder you from delivering your promise, to the actual products and services that you deliver, to your internal communications, your external communications, and ultimately to how your customers experience your products and services and how they perceive them.
So Peter, pause real quick for a second. So as you're talking about hey, what is our brand? What is it that we really care about from an organizational perspective? That's one of the reasons that I thought this session would be so valuable to everybody, because we can boil that macro view down to a micro level, right? We talk about my personal board of advisors.
Right.
What's one of the first things that you do whenever you interact with somebody before they become a mentor, before they become anybody else? They have to know about you, right? What is it that gets you fired up? What makes you jump out of bed in the morning? What is top of mind for you? So it's the idea of a micro brand, the brand of your own individual self. And so all of those concepts feed into almost as a preface of building your own map to professional growth.
Absolutely. Well, the principles that apply for defining your brand DNA, whether or not you're a huge organization like AIA or AIG or Shangri-La or Pepsi or all the ones that we're doing, are the same principles that you can apply for your personal brand. Mm-hmm. Well, what is your purpose in life? Why do you exist? I know it sounds a little bit, a bit heavy, but I've just kind of got off a conversation from somebody who's identified that 75% of people there, as he was describing, are walking around as zombies because they haven't really clarified or identified what their purpose in life is. And that's a mixture of your personal life and family and what your profession is, what really drives you, what difference you're going to make, what's the epitaph on your gravestone. And because we're all so busy, buried in our day-to-day lives, we don't pull up and spend enough time to think about articulating what it is and what we do, and therefore finding the right board of mentors to complement your strengths, but also to kind of reinforce them as well. Because the mentors that get on really well tend to have shared thinking preferences. But when you come to your board, you want people not just to be an echo chamber of repeating what your thoughts are and potentially reinforcing your biases, but you want to find people whose opinions you respect that may differ from yours, and represent. We talked about this before, whole brain thinking.
And so the concept of having a couple of people providing these diverse perspectives, insights, experiences, stories can be super helpful. And even if we don't have our full brand, I reference Ikigai in the book,
Yeah.
right? The concept of bringing together, what am I good at? What can I get paid for? What does the world need? And what do I actually enjoy doing? Right. So and there's actually a couple of worksheets. So once you get the book, it'll walk you through, hey, print it out, and you just walk through some of those pieces, right? Real professional, how I just went through all those pages, but you get the idea, right? So read through, scan the QR code on the back, and start taking action.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of work that you do for yourself, and that's the whole concept. This Pathfinder's methodology is, let's visualize, right, the career map, where I've been, where I'm at, where I want to go. And then I can show something to these different people and say, hey, I kind of have an idea, but there's still some question marks in there. There's still some things I'm trying to figure out. Let's jam on this together. Let's work through maturing this together. Person 1, 2, 3, 4.
Absolutely. That's great. When I was talking about that, I was thinking about your 10 different types of people that sit on your board. You've got scope within that, and not everybody's going to find 10, and not every board needs to be that big, or it could be even bigger. But the principle of saying, you're most likely to migrate towards people who you get on really well with, and you tend to get on well with, consciously or unconsciously, people who think the same way as you do. So they're kind of creative minded, they're right modal, they're adventurous in terms of their thinking, in terms of their expressions. Now, I happen to know that you, Pete, have got the gift of being multimodal in terms of being adaptable, which is why you get on so well with so many different types of people, and your business is successful as an entrepreneur. But the point is, a lot of people actually don't even know what their thinking preferences are. And it goes beyond thinking preferences. Even if you can't craft it perfectly, we all instinctively know what we prefer, and how we kind of think the type of nature of business that we're used to, or the way in which we interact. So it's helpful to understand and know that. It's also helpful to craft your personal brand DNA. Where is it you want to go? Your DNA leads you towards your vision. Where is it that you want to go into in the future? What are the things that you're going to measure your success by? What do your mission, that is your role. That's the key part of it. What do you wake up every morning with a passion to do? That kind of thing. So you balance and you evolve that over time, and actually your board could help you shape that and articulate that in a way that really is meaningful to you.
Hey, Peter, I'm going to put into the chat here, into the comments, link to what you just mentioned, this whole brain thinking. So HBDI. So there we go, and we'll put it there so that people can learn a little bit more. So whenever you talk about this whole brain thinking, multimodal, some of the people listening to this probably, let's see, we're between 5 and 5,000. It looks like right now, somewhere in the middle of that range, tuning in at this very time, and we'll have some more follow on later. But that's where you can learn a little bit more. If you want to get involved, reach out to Peter and say, hey, can I go through this assessment? It was a joy working through him with that. And I actually called out HBDI in the book as one of those first self-assessments that individuals can take, because in order to interact and engage and be successful in growing and developing with others, we kind of have to know thyself first. So whether it's, Gallup Strengths Finder, you do something with predictive index, some people prefer DISC, HBDI, emergenetics, right? There's a myriad of them that can be very valuable of figuring out, hey, who am I? Where am I at? Where are some of those gaps? Where are some of those opportunities, right? And then who am I going to, there's certain conversations we have to see if we get along all right, and how we go on. But there's also some pieces, hey, if you're, very straight shooter, to the point, not a lot of stories, and that's the same way I am, that might be a really good indicator, right? Of, hey, I really, hit it off. These are productive professional development conversations and relationships.
Absolutely.
So a question for you, Peter. Whenever we think about this concept of, hey, career map, personal board of advisors, it's kind of twofold, right? When in your professional career do you think this can benefit you most? And then kind of like where do you see it being implemented? So kind of when and where, and then we'll get into the next one.
Okay. The short answer to that is almost any stage. I wish I knew more about myself, and I wish I'd spent a little bit more time introspectively assessing, what my purpose was and where I wanted to go, and understanding some of the tools that could have helped me there. It became very obvious, 20 years after the path that I had taken. I kind of followed a difficult path through school and academics. Without boasting, I was a smart kid, but I wasn't academically smart. I was always a bit of a misfit in a very scientific, left brain physics and maths type school, which just did not work for me. And I wish I'd found that out sooner, rather than going through university and changing course out of sciences into psychology, finding my niche in advertising and then blossoming. But I think a lot of people stumble their way to finding what it is they're good at. I think you can be a bit more intentional early on. And I think the younger generations now are more so. And I think that's a great start. But I also find, to answer your question, there comes a time, and it's not midlife crisis quite, but if you're a small to medium business owner or something, or you're a CEO of a larger company, you do end up at some point questioning whether or not you're on the right path. Sometimes things are thrown your way. There's so much unpredictability, high levels of turbulence, change and uncertainty. Sometimes the mist just descends and you're in the eye of the storm and you can't orient yourself. And those are the times I find that's when people come to me and say, we need help. We thought we were here. This is going here. We were on track here until this competitor launched and changed the game. We were over here or whatever. So there tends to be a kind of common time, and that's hard to put an age on it, because it can happen at any time.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there. The feedback that we've been getting over the last couple months, couple years, and especially the last few weeks, is this is fantastic for somebody that's graduating from a high school level, from a college level, right? Getting into that first formal professional career. But then also the first-time managers, right? So any of those major transition points, right? Coming in, big-time promotion, right? That's a good time to hit the reset, recalibrate, refresh button, if you will, and step back. And whenever I speak to, different CEOs and leadership groups, and we go through these workshops, they step back and they're like, holy cow, I talk to my people about these concepts, but I don't really have a structure for them. I don't really have a framework for them. This is fantastic. And you know what? I haven't done this for myself for 15 years. I'm so busy working in the business that I'm not necessarily being able to step back and work on myself or work on the business as much as I'd like to.
Well, Pete, I'm constantly surprised at how few senior board members and CEOs are even familiar with many of the tools that we've just mentioned. I know we talked about Herman Holbrain. That's my particular favorite, and I've worked with it. It's just one of the many tools I use, as you say, but I like it because it's almost like original and best, and it really focuses on the diversity of thinking, which how we take in and process information, how we communicate with each other, and how we collaborate. So it's not a personality test. It's not an intelligence test. It's just a measure of thinking preference. And it's very accurate. And no one thinking mode or preference is better or worse than another. And we've all got bits of everything. But it's very useful to know. And I found there's no stage too late. And where I apply it most usefully is to boards or leadership teams, where it's an amazing gelling tool, and it's also incredibly empowering in terms of helping them collaborate and communicate more effectively, particularly with opposites, but also exposing sometimes what I call echo chambers or mutual admiration societies, where you've got 3 or 4 people all thinking the same way, but completely blind spotted in one particular area. They may be brilliant at organization and procedures and safekeeping and detail and agenda keeping, but have no idea about what's around the corner or visioning or future thinking. So anyways, Pete, but before this turns into all me, I mean, have a think about this. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if I asked you the question, you know, what are the one or two really key points that people reading your book are going to get out of it that you really shouldn't miss, you should read the book for, you know, what would they be, so that you can share that with the listeners?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of making it super easy to understand and saying, hey, here's what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, then we're going to work on it together, then I'm going to tell you again, then I'm going to explain it some more, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. So typically it's like 3 times, but I'm doing like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So if we just look at the title of the book, right? And then the words that are in bold, how's that for some marketing? Career map, board of advisors, right? Hands down, 2 simplest concepts. And those are the 2 biggest takeaways that are actionable for people at all phases of their career: pre-career, early career, mid-career, late career, post-career, right? That's exactly what it is. And it's how do we structure some of those connections, engagements, right? Who are those multiple mentors helping us out? You held up the pages in the book earlier, right? From a functional mentor to a cross-functional mentor, a champion, an ally, a sponsor, right? These different people that are there supporting us for sure on our professional development and some of the personal development and growth. But they're also guiding us. Hey, do this, don't do that. And because we have varied lived experiences, we're able to, you know, more appropriately and kind of more effectively provide our plan forward. And then the career map piece, we talked about it briefly, right? But it's how we visualize in a couple of different columns the, you know, what's happened in our lives, right? In the past, in the present, in the future. So, and you might say, Pete, I already got my resume, I got my LinkedIn profile, I'm good to go. Fine, that's looking backwards. You know, who's helped you along those ways? You know, maybe you even have the past and the present completed. Great. But where are you forecasting? And that's the biggest piece of the career map. And so as you put this together, right, then you're able to share it with other people. Because let's face it, Peter, if I have something to say like, hey, here's the start of a plan, then you're able to say, oh, great, I can understand this, maybe move some things around. It helps take a little bit of the burden off of your plate, you being the individual coming from the position of more experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really helps to have what we used to call straw man, you know, so that you can actually build around that, around your skeleton. And then in your 3 things, I have a great colleague, Wayne Lotherington, who made a career out of tell it, sell it, gel it. When it came to talks of what you were saying. So you're kind of doing tell it, sell it, gel it twice, which is a great strategy.
Hey, I figured break it down, make it easy. And if you don't understand the clear benefit, and if it's not easy to accomplish, then a lot of folks aren't going to follow through. They're not going to do it. And the book is really here to help people take action and move things forward. So the other question is, hey, we talk about brand, we talk about the organizations. Let's say my brand is about connection and collaboration and togetherness. You know, how could this concept help turn my brand into, you know, reality? So getting into the organizational use cases.
Right. Well, I mean, like your book, which basically applies insights and tools into action, and it is an action-oriented book. Same with Dim Sum Strategy. Your best DNAs are there to drive action, not just to be nice to know. And I do that in 2 ways. I mean, the whole brand management process is like around a very simple 4Ds process. So discovery, definition, direction, and delivery. So discovery is basically saying, do your homework. You always say that you're customer oriented, but when was the last time you really spoke to them? And do you really understand the key kind of just 3 or 4 practical segments, the different interest groups who are driving all your business, how they differ and what resonates with them, and what is it that they're really valuing within your relationship and your brand? What are they taking out of it? Who are they telling you are your competitors, not what you think? You know, what is it that they are taking out of your brand, and how do they see what your promise is, not what you say it is? Because that's more likely to be right. So that's discovery. And you capture those in terms of insight, and you boil it down to the kind of key things I would call anchors and angels. I call anchors are the 2 or 3 things that hold your company back. They may be the elephant in the room that nobody's too afraid to talk about. The fact that you're bureaucratic and slow and you haven't changed your leadership for 20 years and your thoughts are archaic. Who dare say that?
Change. Oh, we can't do change. For 25 years.
And the angels are the opposite, which are what are the key 2 or 3 opportunities that you really must grasp, because if you don't get them, you're going to lose them. Somebody else is going to take this. That's discovery. Definition is defining your brand DNA, which I was talking about, which, like its genetic counterpart, it becomes this template for replicating consistent desired perceptions in the mind of your customer that then drive experiences. And once you've articulated that, that informs the direction. And the direction phase is, let's not make this strategy thing too complicated. It doesn't have to be. You can pick a strategic framework, which is a graphic representation of a simple way of saying, what are the 3 or 4 big things that we need to do to bring our DNA to life? Do we need to have the best marketing in the world? Do we need to have, a superior product in this particular sphere, or do we need to have it backed up by a core community or whatever, beyond the basics? And then, of course, that broad-based strategic framework gets into a more detailed strategic priorities for each of one of those 3 or 4 pillars, and then actions and KPIs, and that can be driven throughout the organization. And then the last part is delivery, which is taking it to market and accelerating it beyond your limited resources internally, because even the biggest companies in the world, couldn't afford to do all the great marketing that they wanted. You can't advertise in every single medium across every time span, frequently, all the time, every day. You couldn't do it. You've got to limit your resources. So, I had what we call the delivery donut, which is with your brand DNA at the center and the heart of your DNA being your promise, what you're committing to your customers. Think about this donut, if you like. If your people are old enough to remember Trivial Pursuit, you have that perfect little, can you remember that disc with the 6 little cheeses in it? That's exactly what the Discovery donut looks like. But the top ones are the do things. The do's are, what are you doing with your products and services? What are you doing with your people? What are you doing with your systems and structures to enable those people to deliver your products and services? Those are the things that really drive perception and experience of your brand. And then underneath is the say part. So what are you saying internally to your own people? If you're not driving it internally first, you'll never do it externally. What are you doing externally through traditional and non-traditional media? And what are you doing through design and design language? So do the do first, do the say second. People do it the wrong way around the whole time, because they say, well, we've got money, I want to see my website, I want a new logo, I want this, I can touch this. And so they create all of these clothes, and then they try and retrofit themselves into it rather than doing it the other way around.
There's definitely been instances where I've caught myself in some of that reverse cycling, if you will. Hey, I think we're at our 30 minutes here. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Peter, in wrapping up, anything that you'd kind of share with the listeners and viewers about, hey, your biggest, takeaways from, where this can benefit, how this can benefit, and why people should really ultimately care about this Pathfinders methodology, career map, personal board of advisors?
I think it's got just the ring of incredible human truth and common sense, but we all know instinctively that, you need a village to create change. And I love the quote that you basically said, first of all, sums it all up. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it puts structure around how you intentionally build your team, your advisory board. And that's what I really like about it. And that's what I am in now, retrospectively, intentionally fitting these roles into my board and more consciously doing it in a way. And I'm going to say I've been doing it for years, Pete, but the reality is your book has kind of made me think about doing it properly. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And I'll wrap up with something from Hong Kong, right? So I was there most recently 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago now. And down near the water, there was the statue of Bruce Lee, right? And so I'd run past him, and then I'm like, I guess I got to learn a little bit more about Bruce Lee and what he's all about. And there's a quote that really sticks out, and this is in there as well. So everybody that's listening, right, these concepts are helpful, valuable, but absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. So
yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks everybody else for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, and congratulations again, Pete. Well done.
Thank you.